Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're digging into something pretty profound, actually. A real deep mystery.
Yeah, one that touches almost everyone, I think. Near-death experiences.
Exactly, NDEs. And specifically, that recurring image. Moving through a tunnel toward this brilliant light.
It's almost archetypal, isn't it? You see it pop up across cultures, across history.
Definitely. You've probably heard of it.
Yeah.
It really burst into public consciousness after Raymond Moody's book, Life, Afterlife, back in 1975.
Right. And since then, thousands of cases documented worldwide. And the consistency is, well, it's pretty staggering.
Yeah, it really is. And for a long time, the main interpretation, the sort of common understanding, has been really positive, right?
Overwhelmingly so. That tunnel of light, it's seen as, a good thing, a spiritual passage.
Like a path to reunion or higher consciousness, something like that.
Exactly, a benevolent phenomenon. And the reported effects seem to bear that out. People often talk about losing their fear of death, finding a greater sense of spirituality, more purpose in life. It can be genuinely transformative.
Okay, so that's the, let's say, the comforting view, the standard interpretation.
Pretty much.
But what if there's another way to look at it? Something, well, frankly, much more unsettling.
Ah, right. This is where we get into the soul trap hypothesis.
Yeah, and this idea, it flips the script entirely, doesn't it? It's much less known, definitely controversial.
Definitely controversial.
And the core idea here is that this beautiful, peaceful light, it might actually be a deception.
A kind of manipulation.
Yeah, a mechanism designed to trick consciousness, maybe, to keep souls cycling back into material existence.
Yeah.
Trapped.
It's a radical departure, no doubt. Challenges, well, pretty much everything. Spiritual beliefs, scientific models.
For sure. So our mission for you today in this deep dive is to really unpack these two opposing views.
Looking at the NDE light phenomenon from all sides.
Exactly. We'll be drawing on, personal accounts, phenomenology, but also comparative religion, neuroscience, consciousness studies.
A multidisciplinary approach.
Right. The goal is to pull out the essential insights, give you a shortcut to understanding this really complex, fascinating, and, sometimes disturbing topic.
Yeah.
And maybe uncover some surprising facts along the way.
Okay. So where do we start?
Well, before we dive into the theories, let's ground ourselves in what people actually report. Looking at those thousands of cases, what are the really consistent patterns around this light?
The consistency is the first striking thing. You mentioned thousands of cases. Well, in studies compiling, say, over 4,500 NDEs, somewhere between 85 and 92% report seeing light.
Wow, that high.
Yeah, it's incredibly common. And it's not just, seeing a light. The descriptions have recurring elements.
Like the tunnel aspect.
Right. Often a tunnel or feeling drawn towards a point of increasing brightness at the end. A sense of rapid movement is common too.
And sometimes beings, guides.
Often, yes. Guiding entities are frequently reported. And the light itself. It's described in really profound terms.
Oh, so?
People say it feels alive or intelligent. Overwhelmingly loving is a very common description.
That sounds like the positive interpretation we talked about.
It does. And another key element often linked to the light is the life review.
Ah, seeing your life flash before your eyes?
Sort of, yeah. A panoramic review of one's life, often experienced in the presence of this light. And then there's the return decision.
Deciding to come back. Or being told to.
Both, actually. About 76% of cases involve some kind of decision or instruction to return. Sometimes it feels like a choice. Other times people report being sent back, maybe feeling their work isn't done.
Okay, so the first major insight here is just how structured and transformative this experience seems to be for so many. Reduced death anxiety, more purpose, that's significant, whatever the cause.
Absolutely. That positive transformation is a really powerful baseline to keep in mind.
So given these powerful experiences, how have different belief systems trying to make sense of this light? What are the traditional interpretations?
Well, naturally, spiritual and religious traditions often frame it within their existing cosmology.
Right. So in Christianity,
it's often seen as encountering Christ or the divine presence, maybe a glimpse of heaven itself. People draw parallels to, say, Paul on the road to Damascus or prophetic visions like Ezekiel's.
That makes sense. And in Eastern traditions, Buddhism, Hinduism.
There, the light might be understood as Brahman, the ultimate reality in Hinduism, or perhaps Buddha nature, the intrinsic potential for enlightenment.
Like the clear light in the Tibetan Book of the Dead.
Exactly. The Bardo Thodol describes that clear light of the void as the fundamental nature of consciousness revealed at the moment of death. Recognizing it leads to liberation.
And indigenous perspectives.
They often interpret it differently again, perhaps as connecting with ancestors or the spirit world. It often emphasizes continuity, guidance, a sense of belonging within the cosmos.
So broadly speaking, these spiritual frameworks see the light as fundamentally benevolent, right? A sacred encounter.
Generally, yes, that's the dominant spiritual interpretation across many cultures.
Okay. But then we have the flip side, the neurobiological explanations, the materialist viewpoint. What's going on in the brain according to these theories?
Right. So the neurobiological perspective tries to explain NDEs purely through brain processes, especially under stress, like when the brain is deprived of oxygen or during the dying process itself.
What kind of processes?
Well, several candidates. One is the release of endorphins, the body's natural opioids, which could create feelings of peace or euphoria.
Okay.
Another popular one involves DMT-N, N-dimethyltryptamine. It's a powerful psychedelic the brain might produce under extreme stress. Its effects can mimic aspects of NDEs.
Interesting. DMT. Anything else?
Yeah, there's also focus on NMDA receptor activity. These are involved in learning, memory, and altered states. Changes here could contribute. And then there's brain region activity.
Like specific parts of the brain lighting up?
Sort of. Research points towards the temporal lobes, especially the right temporal lobe, which seems to be involved in mystical type experiences. Some studies, like Persinger's work, or research by Blank and Dieguez, explore this.
And I think I've heard about the default mode network, too.
Yes, the DMN. That's the network active during rest or self-reflection. Alterations in DMN activity during near-death states could potentially account for many NDE features, like the life review or a sense of detachment.
So from this perspective, it's all happening within the brain. No need for anything external or spiritual.
That's the materialist hypothesis, yes. Brain chemistry and activity under duress.
Okay. So we've got the spiritual views, mostly benevolent light. We've got the scientific views, brain processes. Now, let's dive into that third possibility, the really unsettling one.
The soul trap hypothesis.
Right. This isn't just interpreting the experience. It's suggesting the experience itself might be, well, engineered. What's the absolute core of this theory?
Okay, the soul trap hypothesis essentially breaks down into a few key interconnected ideas. First, there's the deceptive light mechanism.
Meaning the light isn't real, or isn't what it seems.
Exactly. It proposes the light isn't divine or spiritual, but maybe some kind of technology or an interdimensional construct. Something designed to lure or manipulate consciousness when it's vulnerable right after death.
Okay, that's a big claim. What else?
Second, coercive reincarnation. The idea here is that reincarnation isn't about voluntary learning or spiritual growth.
But forced.
Yeah, a forced recycling of souls. Maybe to harvest energy, maybe to maintain control, prevent spiritual progress.
Harvest energy. Wow. Okay, third point.
The life review manipulation. This suggests the life review isn't objective learning, but is used to induce guilt, shame, or feelings of obligation.
To make you want to reincarnate. To fix things.
Precisely. To compel acceptance of another round, framed as paying off karma or learning lessons you supposedly failed.
This is dark stuff. And the last part.
That ties into the idea of an archontic control system, drawing heavily from Gnostic beliefs.
Gnosticism. Ancient mystical traditions, right?
Yeah.
Saw the material world as flawed, maybe created by a lesser god.
Exactly. So this part of the theory posits that there are malevolent entities, call them archons, maybe even advanced AIs running this system, perpetuating these cycles of incarnation for their own benefit. Energetic exploitation is a common theme.
Energetic exploitation. The phrase is chilling, like we're cosmic batteries or something.
It's a disturbing analogy, yes.
But this core idea, deception after death, spiritual entrapment, it's not entirely modern sci-fi, is it? You mentioned Gnosticism. Did ancient cultures warn about this?
Oh, absolutely. These concerns have deep historical roots. They aren't just, internet conspiracy theories from today.
So the Gnostics, what did their texts say? I know many were found relatively recently, like at Nag Hammadi.
Right. The Nag Hammadi library, discovered in 1945, was huge. Texts like the hypostasis of the archons, the reality of the rulers describe the demiurge, the creator god, in their view, as a kind of false, ignorant god who traps divine sparks, souls, in the material world he created.
So a warning against mistaking the creator for the true ultimate divine.
Exactly, and warnings against trusting seemingly powerful or benevolent entities encountered after death. Then there's the Apocryphon of John.
What does that one add?
It goes into detail about how souls can be deceived into returning, tricked into drinking the water of forgetfulness, given false memories or counterfeit spiritual experiences to lure them back into bodies. The goal is to prevent them returning to the true, higher spiritual realms.
Wow. False memories. Counterfeit experiences.
And even Pistis Sophia, another Gnostic text, describes souls being deliberately misdirected in the afterlife by deceptive rulers or archons. So yeah, the idea of post-death trickery is deeply embedded in Gnosticism.
It's actually quite insightful, isn't it?
Yeah.
That these ancient traditions had such a sophisticated, maybe even paranoid view of the afterlife.
It certainly challenges the modern, often simplified view. It shows this concern about deception has a long, albeit sometimes hidden, history.
Were there echoes in other traditions too, beyond Gnosticism?
Definitely. Look at the Tibetan Buddhist Bardo Thodol, the Book of the Dead.
We mentioned the clear light earlier.
Right. It's an incredibly detailed guide for navigating the after-death state, the Bardo. And crucially, while it talks about encountering brilliant lights associated with enlightened beings...
It also warns you, right?
Yes. It warns specifically against becoming attached to those lights or being overwhelmed by them. Failure to recognize their true nature, essentially, as projections of your own mind or getting attached leads directly back to rebirth, not liberation.
So even beautiful lights can be a kind of trap if you don't understand them correctly.
That's the Tibetan perspective, yes. Discernment is key.
Any other examples? Plato, maybe?
Plato's myth of Ur in the final book of the Republic. It describes souls choosing their next lives. But their choices are often driven by experiences in their past life, by ignorance, habit, or compulsion, rather than true wisdom or free will. Some souls rush into new lives without proper consideration.
So even if it's a choice, it might not be a fully informed or free one.
That's the implication. It really makes you question the nature of postmortem free will, and even think about ancient Egypt.
The Book of the Dead, all those spells.
Exactly. Texts like the Egyptian Book of the Dead contain spells and knowledge intended to help the deceased navigate the afterlife, avoid dangers, pass judgments, and importantly, avoid being misled by hostile entities or false gods. The emphasis was on having the right knowledge and passwords, essentially, to avoid spiritual pitfalls.
It's incredible how widespread this theme of potential misdirection seems to be once you start looking.
It really is.
But the question arises, are we pattern matching here? Reading modern anxieties back into ancient texts? Or is there a genuine thread? And how does this connect to modern proponents of the soul trap idea?
That's the critical question, isn't it? How much is interpretation versus direct lineage? Modern proponents certainly do draw heavily on these ancient sources. Well, you have figures like David Icke, who talks about an archontic matrix. He blends Gnostic ideas with theories about interdimensional reptilian beings manipulating humanity and harvesting emotional energy, keeping us locked in reincarnation cycles.
Okay, that's definitely out there for many.
Yes. Then there's someone like Wes Panray, who has developed a very complex metaphysical framework suggesting Earth is essentially a prison planet, a controlled experiment where souls are trapped and farmed for energy.
Prison planet. Sounds familiar from sci-fi, too.
It does tap into those tropes. And you also have claims emerging from areas like the alleged Montauk Project, with figures like Preston Nichols.
The supposed secret government time travel, mind control experiments.
Right. Nichols and others involved claimed knowledge of technologies used to create artificial afterlife simulations, basically holographic traps to capture souls and manage reincarnation.
So these modern theories often add a technological layer to the ancient spiritual warnings.
Very much so. They synthesize ancient Gnostic or esoteric warnings with contemporary anxieties about control, technology, and conspiracy. The trap becomes potentially technological or AI-driven, not just spiritual entities.
Okay, so we have this radical hypothesis with ancient echoes and modern proponents. But let's get critical. What's the actual evidence? Is there anything in the NDE data itself that supports these, frankly, quite wild alternative interpretations?
Well, wild is one word for it. But yes, proponents point to certain aspects of NDE reports. Firstly, while most NDEs are positive, we can't ignore the minority that are distressing.
Hellish NDEs.
Yes, hellish or void experiences. But more relevant to the soul trap idea are reports with specific coercive elements.
Coercive? How so?
People reporting feeling forced to return against their will, or encountering entities that seem manipulative, not purely benevolent. And significantly, some reports where the light itself feels wrong.
Wait, the light feels wrong. How?
Yeah.
That goes against the core loving light narrative.
Exactly. Some experiencers describe the light as feeling artificial, mechanical, even holographic, like there's technology behind it, not divinity.
It's a major anomaly.
It is, and linked to that, some report the love they feel from the light seems conditional.
Traditional. Not unconditional love.
Right. Conditional on them agreeing to go back or accepting a certain narrative about their life or purpose. That contradicts the overwhelming reports of pure, unconditional acceptance.
Any other anomalies?
Memory manipulation comes up sometimes. People feeling like memories were altered, implanted, or even erased during the NDE. Again, that suggests something more akin to interference than a natural spiritual process.
Okay, artificial light, conditional love, memory issues. What about cultural differences?
That's another interesting area. While the core NDE structure is surprisingly consistent worldwide, the specific form the light or beings take often aligns with the person's cultural background.
Like Christians seeing Christ, Buddhists seeing Buddha.
Exactly. Which could suggest the experience is shaped by expectation. But perhaps more intriguingly for the soul trap theorists, some researchers note that contemporary NDEs seem to be incorporating more technological imagery.
Like computers, machines.
Yes, things that obviously weren't reported centuries ago. Proponents might argue this shows the control mechanism is evolving or adapting its appearance.
Okay, those are certainly points that make you pause and think. They challenge the simple positive narrative.
They do introduce complexity and ambiguity.
But let's bring in the counterarguments now. We need
Right.
balance. What's the strong evidence against the soul trap hypothesis? What are the big problems with it?
Okay, several major challenges. First and foremost, the sheer volume of positive reports.
The overwhelming majority.
Yes, the vast majority of NDE research highlights positive, lasting psychological transformations. Reduced death anxiety, increased spirituality, greater life satisfaction, empathy. This strongly contradicts the idea that the core experience is fundamentally negative or coercive.
So the positive outcomes argue against the negative mechanism. What else?
The neurobiological explanations we discussed earlier. Neuroscience offers plausible, if not yet complete, explanations for all the reported NDE phenomena: tunnel, light, euphoria, life review, out-of-body sensations based on brain activity, DMT, DMN changes, etc.
Without needing any external entities or traps.
Exactly. From a scientific standpoint, if brain processes can account for it, there's no need to invoke complex, unproven metaphysical frameworks like soul traps, Occam's razor,
The simplest explanation is often the best.
That's the principle. And then there are serious methodological problems with the soul trap theories themselves.
Such as?
Well, a big one is lack of falsifiability. How could you ever scientifically prove or disprove the existence of archons or an energy harvesting system? It's outside the realm of empirical testing.
So it risks being just an untestable belief system.
Pretty much. There's also the high risk of confirmation bias, people interpreting ambiguous elements in NDE reports through the lens of a pre-existing belief in a soul trap.
Seeing what they expect to see.
Right. And finally, there's simply no independent, verifiable evidence for these complex control mechanisms or malevolent entities. It relies entirely on interpreting subjective experiences and ancient texts.
Okay, so the key insight here seems to be this real tension. We have mostly positive reports and plausible brain science on one side. On the other, a persistent minority of disturbing accounts, ancient warnings, and a theory that, while compelling to some, is very hard to prove or disprove.
That sums up the dilemma nicely. It's the clash between consistent subjective positivity and these troubling outliers and alternative frameworks.
To make this even clearer, let's contrast some actual accounts. First, can you share a typical positive NDE? Anonymized, of course.
Sure. This is adapted from the NDERF database. Typical elements. I suddenly found myself floating above my body. Then I was moving fast, through a dark space like a tunnel. It wasn't scary, though. Ahead, there was this light. Unbelievably bright, but it didn't hurt my eyes. As I got closer, I felt this wave wash over me. Pure, unconditional love, more intense than anything I'd ever known. The light felt intelligent, like it knew me completely, all my faults, and loved me anyway. My whole life unfolded. Not like a movie, but I understood the impact of everything. The connections. There was no judgment, just understanding. The light communicated not with words, but directly, mind to mind. It told me it wasn't my time, I had to go back. I desperately wanted to stay in that love, but I know it was right. Then, bang, I was back in my body, intense pain.
Okay, that feels familiar. Loving, peaceful, transformative. Now, Let's hear the other side. An account reflecting those anomalous, potentially unsettling elements may be compiled from reports on alternative forums.
Right. This synthesizes features from those kinds of reports. It started, like they say, the tunnel, the light. But as I approached, something felt off. The light seemed intensely bright, but somehow artificial. Like a super advanced hologram, maybe? I could almost sense technology behind it, humming. Then beings appeared. They looked like angels, maybe, but they felt robotic, like they were following a script. The life review wasn't loving, it was harsh. It focused only on my mistakes, my failures, amplifying the guilt. They kept saying I failed the test, that I had lessons to learn and needed to go back, to reincarnate immediately. It felt like pressure, not guidance. A thought hit me, this isn't right, this isn't love. I tried to mentally say, no, I want to go towards source, the real source. And that's when they became insistent, almost forceful. It felt like a struggle. I just kept focusing on no, on wanting truth. And then I woke up gasping.
Wow, the contrast is stark. It's night and day, really.
It really is.
So looking at that second account, what are the key patterns that jump out, the things that make it so different from the first?
Several things stand out in these anomalous accounts. First, the sense of an artificial facade, the light, the being seeming fake or technological. Second, coercive communication using guilt, obligation, pressure, rather than unconditional love or free choice. Third, a critical choice point where the experiencer feels something is wrong and actively resists or questions the process.
That moment of saying no.
Exactly. Fourth, sometimes reports of memory gaps or feeling like something was altered or forgotten. And fifth, perhaps most crucially, the sense that successful resistance, asserting their own will, refusing the program, leads to a different outcome, like waking up immediately, feeling they potentially avoided a trap.
The insight here seems to be that these rare accounts suggest the possibility of agency, of choice, even pushback in that post-mortem state. It complicates the idea of a purely passive journey.
Absolutely. It introduces the idea that the afterlife or the transition state might be more complex, maybe even contested territory, requiring discernment and assertion of will.
This whole discussion, contrasting these views, it inevitably leads to bigger questions, doesn't it? Why does this deep dive matter to you, the listener? Beyond just being a weird or fascinating topic. Let's talk implications, consciousness and free will, for instance.
Right. It fundamentally challenges us to think about post-mortem consent. If consciousness persists, does it retain the ability to choose? And does it have the right to full, honest information about what's happening, what the options are?
Like spiritual informed consent.
Kind of, yeah. It brings up this idea of cognitive vulnerability. Are we particularly susceptible to suggestion or manipulation in that state? And conversely, the principle of spiritual sovereignty.
Spiritual sovereignty, meaning?
The inherent right of consciousness, of your core self, to self-determination, to not be coerced or tricked, especially regarding something as fundamental as where your consciousness goes or what it does after death. It forces you to ask, what does my agency mean beyond this life?
And connecting this to today, how does modern technology play into this? Does it make these soul trap ideas seem less fantastical?
I think it does, in a way. Look at neurotechnology now. We have transcranial magnetic stimulation that can induce altered states. We have incredibly immersive VR. Brain-computer interfaces are developing rapidly.
Things that directly interact with or simulate conscious experience?
Precisely. And then think about the theoretical frontiers. Consciousness uploading realistic holographic projections, maybe even interdimensional tech down the line. Suddenly, the idea of simulating or manipulating conscious experience, even creating artificial realities or afterlife scenarios, seems, well, theoretically more plausible.
It shifts the conversation slightly, doesn't it? From purely spiritual or metaphysical to potentially techno-spiritual.
Exactly. The insight isn't that the soul trap is technology, but that our own technological advancements make the core concept of consciousness manipulation feel less like pure fantasy and more like something we need to think about seriously. Whether the manipulator is conceived as divine, demonic, alien, or even human technology in the future.
So, given all this, the standard view, the challenging view, the ancient warnings, the modern tech angle, what's the practical takeaway? If there's even a tiny chance this alternative view holds water, how should we approach death? How can we prepare?
That's the crucial point. Regardless of whether the soul trap hypothesis is literally true, the discussion itself highlights the value of proactive preparation for death.
Rather than just hoping for the best.
Right. It points towards things like conscious death practice. This could involve meditation techniques, lucid dreaming practice, essentially training your mind to maintain awareness and clarity even when your state of consciousness shifts dramatically.
Sharpening your awareness skills now.
Exactly. Then there's knowledge preparation, learning about different afterlife models, different spiritual maps like the Bardo Thodol, Gnostic ideas, NDE reports themselves. Having some framework, some knowledge, means you're less likely to be completely disoriented or naive if and when you transition.
Being informed about the possibilities?
Yes. And finally, intention setting. Clearly formulating your own intention for what you want after death. Do you want liberation, reunion with loved ones, direct connection to source? Holding a clear intention might help maintain focus and resist potential misdirection.
So it's about cultivating awareness, knowledge, and intention before you get there.
It's about empowering your consciousness, taking a sovereign stance towards your own journey rather than passively accepting whatever experience comes first. The final key insight really is that this whole exploration empowers you to think critically, to prepare consciously, and to claim your own spiritual authority, whatever you believe awaits.
Okay. We've covered a lot of ground today. We dove deep into the tunnel of light, seeing it's this incredibly complex crossroads. Neuroscience, personal experience, religion, metaphysics, all intersect here.
And while the vast majority of reported NDEs are positive, life-changing in good ways, there's that small but persistent set of anomalous reports. Combine those with warnings from ancient wisdom traditions. Well, it certainly gives you pause. It merits serious thought.
Absolutely. And the soul trap hypothesis, even if you find it outlandish or unproven, it serves a purpose, doesn't it?
I think so. Its value might lie in challenging our assumptions. It forces us to critically examine one of the most profound human experiences, rather than accepting the simplest or most comforting explanation without question. It promotes discernment.
So maybe the ultimate takeaway from this deep dive isn't about definitively knowing what happens. Perhaps it's about how we approach that mystery.
Precisely. It suggests that facing death, that ultimate transition, with informed awareness, with critical thinking, with a clear commitment to your own spiritual sovereignty, that might be the wisest path, regardless of what's actually on the other side, rather than just passively drifting towards the first light you see.
A provocative thought to leave you with, then. Consider what preparations you might make, not just for living your life, but for navigating that final transition. How can you cultivate your own inner discernment, your own clear intention right now? What does your spiritual sovereignty truly mean to you?